Give me a sec. Let me go live.
Call to order, pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We have no public, so there will be no public comment on agenda items. Oh, we do have somebody. We have Mr. Boretsky here. No public comment. Minutes, we're going to have to defer the vote on the minutes until the next meeting. We don't have a quorum. Resolution 22-22, setting updated performance measure targets. I believe that goes to Scott. Scott?
Well, Mr. Chair, I must say that at this point, since we don't have a quorum, we're not going to be able to take the requested action for this resolution. I can still walk you through what the resolution will cover for the sake of anybody who might be watching online or the next technical planning meeting. That's up to you if you'd like to do that.
Please.
Okay. So I draw your attention to pages 3 through 8 of your agenda packets, where Resolution 22-22 is a resolution of the Northwestern Indiana Regional Planning Commission setting updated performance measure targets. This resolution seeks to update a plethora of performance measure targets related to safety, bridge and pavement condition, travel time reliability, freight, and on-road mobile source emissions performance measure targets. The Indiana Department of Transportation formally sent NERC letters requesting that we have 180 days to review the statewide targets for all these measures. And staff have reviewed those letters and decided to adopt the statewide targets. That's our recommendation for all these performance measures. You can find all these measures in the tables on pages 5 through 6 and also on pages 7 through 8. But the table on pages 5 through 6 pertains to the NWI 2050 plan. That's our long range plan and what we have to change in order to update these targets. And the tables on pages 7 to 8 pertains to the fiscal year 2022 to 2026 transportation improvement program. So walking through what the targets are specifically, for a number of fatalities, the proposed target for the calendar year of 2023 is no more than 894.2 statewide. That is unfortunately an increase over the target from this current calendar year of 876.0. So there is expected to be more fatalities based on the data trends. The rate of fatalities per 100 million vehicle miles traveled is also unfortunately projected to increase. So the target in 2023 moved to 1.088. That's an increase from 1.076. The number of serious injuries also unfortunately shows an increase in the calendar year 2023 to 3,348.1. That's an increase from 2,998.2. The rate of serious injuries per 100 million vehicle miles traveled increases unfortunately from 3.675 in 2022 to 4.068 in 2023. And finally, the last safety target is the non-motorized serious injuries and fatalities. That unfortunately also shows an increase from 344.5 in 2022 to 399.6 in 2023. Those are all of the safety-related performance measure targets. I must say that usually we separate the categories of all these performance measure targets into separate resolutions, but in the interest of bookkeeping for the agency and not having so many resolutions, we decided to consolidate all of these performance measures into one resolution. So moving on, the next category that's shown on this table on page 5 relates to the on-road mobile source emissions performance measure targets. Starting with the volatile organic compounds. This is based on the amount of funded CMAQ, or congestion mitigation air quality projects that this agency funds. So it's not necessarily based on the total number of amount of emissions, but the targets, as you can see, are 590.00 by 2023 and 600.00 by 2025. We do show more projects lowering the emissions for volatile organic compounds as we continue to fund our projects. And that trend carries all the way through the rest of the on-road mobile source emissions. That's true of the nitrogen oxides of nitrogen, NOx, as well as carbon monoxide, particulate matter less than 10 microns in diameter, 10. So those are all the on-road fuel source emissions measure targets. Moving on to the table on page 6. Now we're showing the travel time reliability targets, so the percent of interstate pavements. Actually, I'm sorry, we're starting with the pavement condition performance measure targets. So the percent of interstate pavement in good condition. That does actually fortunately show an improvement from it was 50.00 in 2021, the most latest year of the target, and that moves up to 60.00 by 2023 and 62.00 by 2025. So as the state continues to invest in improving interstate, we would expect to see the pavement condition improve. The percentage of interstate pavements in poor condition, the latest target in 2021 was 0.80%. That's expected to improve to 1.00%, or actually get worse to 1.00% by 2023, and stay that way through 2025. So slightly more poor pavements on the interstate, but not quite much. For the percent of non-interstate national highway system pavements in good condition, that does show improvement from 40.00% in 2021 up to 50.00% in 2023. Then falls back down a little bit to 48.00% by 2025. So that's based on the INDOT's data trends in their pavement management system. The percent of non-interstate national highway system pavements in poor condition does actually improve this time. The latest target was 3.10% in 2021. That goes down to 1.50% in 2023. Stays that way through 2025. Now looking at bridge condition, the percentage of national highway system bridge area in good condition basically stays the same, gets a little bit better from 47.20% in the latest year of 2021 to 49.00% in 2023. Then falls down again slightly to 47.50% by 2025. And the percentage of national highway system bridge area in poor condition, the latest target was 3.10% in 2021. That gets slightly better or slightly less poor, only 3.00% by 2023, holding that way in 2025. So those are the pavement and bridge condition performance measures. Moving on to the next category, which are the travel time reliability performance measures. Percent of person miles traveled on the interstate that are reliable. It's already very reliable. The last target was 92.8% in 2021. Continues to get even better, 93.0% in 2023, 93.5% in 2025. And then looking at the percentage of person miles traveled on the non-interstate national highway system that are reliable, that gets a little bit better. It was 89.8% in the last target year of 2021. It improved to 93.0% by 2023 and 93.5% by 2025. Looking at the truck travel time reliability index, this is the latest target was 1.30. For this measure, higher is worse, so it's like a golf score, but looking at 1.32 by 2023, so getting a little bit worse, and back to 1.30 by 2025, so the same as it was in 2021. Not much change there. And those are all the performance measure targets that are included in Resolution 22-22. Any questions?
More of a statement, Scott. I'm seeing a lot of improvement or reduction of the emission standards. Is this because of the trend toward electric vehicles?
So when you say reduction of the emissions standards, actually what you're actually seeing is technically it would actually be getting worse because keep in mind that these numbers are reductions. So if you see fewer reductions, that means that you're not actually reducing those emissions as much. But also keep in mind that these targets are based on funded projects in the CMAQ program, or the Congestion Mitigation and Quality Program. There is unfortunately going to be less funding for that program in the future because some of that funding allocation is going to move to be flexed to other programs that we fund, just based on how INDOT has suballocated our funding as an agency. So it's kind of a complicated issue. I don't want to get too much into the weeds about it, but these targets should not be read as the amount that these emissions are actually going to be reduced by, because like this is just one tiny component of the CMAQ funded projects and how much they reduce it by.
These are the written goals that we're suggesting to the federal government, and should they accept them, we can pursue grants and other relationships with the federal and state governments.
Yeah, and I should mention that like these targets did not originate with our staff, they originated with NDOT staff, who was keeping an eye on, has a larger capacity to keep an eye on these trends. And so they wrote formal letters to our executive director and our staff, and we looked at those internally. So that's what we're bringing to you as a committee.
Well, we do have a quorum now. We had a third voting member arrive, so I guess I'd entertain a motion to recommend approval of these to the technical planning committee.
I'll make a motion that we recommend this to the technical planning committee. I'll make the second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
3-0, so there will be no nays. I'm gonna go back now to the minutes of August 23rd. Entertain a motion on those.
Motion to approve. Second, I think I was in attendance at that meeting.
I do recall
It was a long time ago.
We had it in the other meeting room.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Jim Press was there.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 3-0. Okay, we'll move on to the NOFA.
Okay, so kind of the bulk of your agenda packets on pages 9 to 16 are an illustrative view of what the NOFA application will mostly look like for the two programs that this committee will be in charge of exploring, evaluating, and recommending to the technical planning committee. Those two project types are new roadways and roadway improvements. So the first on pages 9 through 12, those are, this application section pertains to new roadways, and then the section on pages 14 through 16, 14 through 16 pertains to roadway improvements. So I say that they're illustrative at this point because there are some minor technical changes that will occur between now and October 20th, the date that this NOFA will be released. Those are usually minor clerical errors, like there are names of staff people that are no longer with the agency. Some very minor changes that we're looking at making between now and when this is officially released, right after the commission meeting that's scheduled to take place on this Thursday, October 20th. But if we want to walk us through this application as we see it, it's pretty much the same from last time for these two project types from 2 years ago. If anybody wants to be walked through it, we can do that. Otherwise, it's your opportunity to bring up any matters for discussion.
Will you be available to anybody who gets working on these and has questions?
Yes, absolutely. So I should note that on our website right now, you can find some important dates pertaining to this NOFA. Like I said, it will be released on October 20th, this Thursday. There will be a workshop on Wednesday, October 26th, so a week from tomorrow, at our offices. I believe the time of that is, I think it's in the morning. I didn't see it on the website, but it definitely will be announced. I think it's 9 or 10 in the morning, probably.
Scott, just repeat the date, the time, and the fact there's a workshop.
Yeah.
One of the principal reasons I'm here this morning is to PPC to make sure if there were any questions at this time, but since we don't have much feedback this morning, we're still listening.
Okay. Yeah.
What is the date and time of the workshop?
So the workshop it's Wednesday, October 26th. It will be in this building. I believe the time. Okay, at 9 to 11 a.m. 9 to 11 a.m. in this very room, the Lake Michigan room, on Wednesday, October 26th, will be a workshop to be mostly question and answers, but we'll also facilitate a little bit of guidance about the application itself on Wednesday, October 26th.
I would suggest that anybody who's going to submit under these two categories for the NOFA go through the application and get yourself started, get yourself ready so that the workshop is productive and we can work through any issues that people might have.
Yep. Yeah. And some more dates if I may continue. So any time between now in November 11th, that actually includes even before we've officially released the NOFA, there's going to be optional pre-application scoping meetings with any of our staff. We're happy to arrange one-on-one meetings just to help scope any potential projects that are out there. And that can continue up until November 11th. The application deadline, this is a very important date, is November 18th at 12 o'clock noon Central Standard Time. The application for this NOFA will close. All application materials must be due to NERC by then. Then following that date of November 18th, we will immediately begin the process of staff scoring and also following up as staff with the applicants if there's any missing information, mainly regarding clerical, so there will be some leeway in terms of if there was an honest mistake of forgetting something, but we'll try to be fair in terms of if there's missing materials that we're giving everybody the opportunity to be able to provide those. So the idea is after the deadline and before this next committee meeting to kind of make sure that we shore up that all the materials are provided for, so that we don't have to do that during those scoring committee meetings. So that'll happen after the deadline. And then also, just in general, from December 2nd through January 27th will be the time frame in which the committee, the topical committees, will review the applications for the NOFA. This specific committee is scheduled for Tuesday, January 10th, as you can see at the bottom of your agenda. Our next meeting for this committee will be reviewing these two project types, the new roadways and roadway improvements applications. And then so the technical planning committee will not be taking up any of the scoring for these applications until Tuesday, February 14th, when all the topical committees will have made a scoring recommendation to the technical planning committee.
And what's important is this is for planning in the future, mostly for the 2025 and the later application process. As is traditional with the agency, we plan way in advance and commit the dollars. So our municipalities know what to expect and the apportionments, and we can sort out things and spend the money that our region deserves to earn.
Federal aid projects do take a long time to develop. It's nothing that you can do in just a couple months. It takes many months.
And I think, I think as much as 3 years sometimes for right-of-way acquisition, for basic, or the fundamental engineering planning. But there's a lot of different steps and partnerships that have to evolve to make these projects become a reality. And that's always been true.
Scott, I will back up just a question just for clarification. You have a deadline scheduled for submission to the NOFA of November 18th at noon, and I assume that's Central Standard Time?
Yes.
Just taking care of business.
Yes, that is the final drop dead deadline. But like I said, the staff will be reviewing all of the applications after the deadline, and if we find some missing clerical type of information that isn't very substantive related to the application, we will follow up with the applicants and receive those needed documentation. But the idea is to the extent possible, as complete as you can have by November 18th at noon is what the deadline is. Okay.
Any other questions on the NOFA? Any other discussion? Let's go to staff updates.
Yes, so this is the PowerPoint presentation. Clicker. We'll start with the safety and travel time reliability updates for the third quarter of calendar year 2022. That was from July 1st through September 30th. So looking at collisions in our region, we saw 6,506 total collisions. That amounted to 1,177 injuries and 24 fatalities. This is across all three counties, Lake Porter and Porter. Now we're going to break it down by county and look at the previous quarter's performances for each of these metrics. So starting with total collisions in Lake County, the number from the third quarter unfortunately did go up from the second quarter from 4,344 up to 4,526. It still wasn't quite as high as the fourth quarter of last year, 2021. Looking at the property damage collisions, that number didn't change by that much. It did go up a little bit from last quarter. It was at 3,712. Looking at the collisions that resulted in injuries, that number unfortunately went up to 800, which is the highest it's been in the last 4 quarters of measurement. Looking at the total injuries, as you might expect, if the number of collisions resulting in injuries went up, the total number of injuries also did go up to 1,091. Now looking at what types of severity those injuries were, incapacitating injuries actually did go up slightly from last quarter up to 183, but that wasn't quite as high as it was in the fourth quarter of last year, 232. And looking at, those are the number of collisions that resulted in incapacitating injuries. Looking at the number of incapacitating injuries themselves, that number at 231 also went up slightly from last quarter, but still not as high as it was fourth quarter of 2021. Looking at the collisions that resulted in possible injuries in Lake County, that number actually did get a little bit better, went from 96 down to 86 this last quarter. Looking at the number of possible injuries themselves, 115, so that did actually go down slightly from last quarter as well. And then for number of collisions that resulted in fatalities, it was at 14 in Lake County last quarter. That actually got slightly better from the 17. Of course, no fatality collision is good from 17 in the second quarter. And the total number of fatalities reported in Lake County from traffic collisions was 16, and that was a slight decrease from the 19 the previous quarter. Looking at how that breaks down in LaPorte County, we're going alphabetical. So actually in LaPorte County, as you can see, in general, the third quarter of 2022 was an improvement from all of the previous quarters that we've been measuring in terms of total collisions, property damage collisions. However, when it came to actual injury collisions, it did get slightly worse in LaPorte County from 139 up to 158. And total number of injuries also was a little bit up last quarter for 214, but that's still lower than fourth quarter of 2021. Looking at the collisions of incapacitating injuries, that pretty much stayed the same. It went from 32 to 34. The number of incapacitating injuries did slightly increase from 39 to 42. And number of possible injury collisions went from 19 to 16. And possible injuries reported from 22 to 19. We didn't have that many fatalities in LaPorte County, fortunately, but there still were 6 collisions that resulted in fatalities, and 7 fatalities reported, which actually was the highest in the last 4 quarters in LaPorte County. Looking at what that looks like in Porter County then, so this past quarter, 1,200 total collisions. That was a slight increase from 1,158 in the second quarter of 2022. Looking at the collisions that resulted in property damage, that went up from 957 to 977. The collisions that resulted in injuries, unfortunately, was the highest it had been since we've been measuring this. Porter County was 219 in the third quarter of this year. The total number of injuries was also the highest we had measured at 300. The collisions resulting in incapacitated injuries was not much different. It was 56. It went up from 49. The number of incapacitated injuries also didn't change by a whole lot. It went from 54 to 64. But looking at the collisions that resulted in possible injuries, that number went up from 21 to 27, but still not as high as it was last year in the fourth quarter. And possible injuries reported was 34 last quarter. The number of collisions that resulted in fatalities in Porter County was 4. That's just 1 lower than it was in the second quarter. And the number of fatalities reported due to traffic collisions in Porter County was 4 as well last quarter. So if you have any questions about the safety component of this presentation, I'd be happy to take them.
Scott, do we have anything that separates the state highways from the local roads as far as these accidents? Yes.
That's a good question. That we definitely could provide an answer to that. We have not yet sifted to that degree of detail for this presentation, but that is technically available. So we can help follow up with you with that answer. But yeah, we could try to figure it out. But we don't have it for you today.
Well, as a regional agency, we're involved with both.
Yeah.
I think it's important for our municipalities to know what their
So now looking at the travel time reliability, truck travel time reliability congestion update from the third quarter of this year. So looking at travel time reliability on the interstate system. So last meeting, and I apologize, it's hard to read with the black font. I should have used white here on the bar chart. But so our target was at least 92.8% of the system should have a level of travel time reliability less than 1.50. And we are not yet meeting that target in our region. So far this whole calendar year, 2022, we're at 87.4%, so we're short of the 92.8%. The only month that we would have actually met the target was January, when 99.9% of our interstates were reliable, or under 1.50 threshold of reliability. Every other single month was less reliable, but looking at how it broke down in the last quarter, July and August, July was actually the worst month in terms of reliability so far this year at 79.1% on our interstates. It did improve slightly to 81.6% in August, and then in September it bumped all the way up to 87.3%, which is the most reliable it's been since April. It was still a little higher in April than it was in September. And so looking at the map, where the problem areas are, there are areas that are not green on this map, and those are mainly on the westbound I-8094 Bowman Expressway segment between I-65 and Pine Avenue approximately. That's where the most unreliability occurs, the least reliability. The eastbound 8094 wasn't actually quite as bad as westbound, it looks like, but there still was a little bit of a problem area reaching the state line. And also, oh yeah, this is from the second quarter, I should mention. This was April through June. And so compare that to the third quarter, where it looks like, if you go back and forth, we still continued in the third quarter to see that problem area west of I-65 on the westbound I-8094 Bowman Expressway. But it looks like the area in Porter County on westbound 94 did improve from June through the last quarter, July through September. We didn't see that problem area on the westbound 94 in Porter County for reliability. And so now looking at travel time reliability on the non-interstate national highway system. Well, in this case, we actually exceeded our target every month of the year so far. Our target was 89.8%, and our overall performance this whole year has been 98.4%. Every single month has exceeded our target, so we've been more reliable than the target we set for the non-interstate system. The most reliable month was still January at 98.9%. But looking at the third quarter, interestingly, actually got slightly worse from the second quarter overall, but not much change. We're talking about 95.9% reliability in June. That dropped slightly to 95.3% in July, and that actually rebounded to 96.1% in August, then dropped to 94.2% in September. Looking at the truck travel time reliability on the interstates, in this case, our target was 1.30, so the target should be less than 1.30. The only month that we actually met that in was April. Every other single month, we actually did not meet our targets for this. The worst month for reliability, for truck travel time reliability, was June at 1.68. That was the highest. That was like 12 scores, which think higher is worse. And August was 1.64, so it was the second worst month. But September definitely showed an improvement from August, all the time 1.46 for how reliable truck travel time was. And then looking at the problem areas for truck travel time reliability on our interstate system, it's pretty much the same as the travel time reliability in general problem areas. But you can see more gets called out here a little bit. This was the second quarter, I should also mention. In addition to the areas that I've already talked about, you can see that there's an area in LaPorte County where 94 kind of bends there near Michigan City. There was a work zone there, that's probably why. And then looking at near the state line on the Indiana Toll Road where it turns into the Chicago Skyway, that was also called out a little bit. I should mention that I don't think that corridor is so heavily used by trucks because the tolls are quite expensive there. But it did get called out there. And then looking at the third quarter, so this is back and forth between the second quarter and the third quarter, it looks like we can kind of see that the I-8094 Bowman Expressway actually looks worse in the third quarter west of I-65 than it did in the second quarter for trucks. there's more orange there. It's pretty much solid orange all the way from 65 to almost all the way to the state line, probably at Calumet Avenue it becomes yellow. And then you can still see the area highlighted in the Michigan City area on I-94 to do that work zone. And also, I mean, in Hobart is still highlighted by there's a toll booth there. But anyway, so this is just how the truck travel time reliability breaks down. Overall, so I-65 didn't get called out much in terms of the problem area. It did a little bit in the third quarter in southbound through the Erie Hobart corridor there. So that's all I have for the travel time and truck travel time reliability update. Does anybody have any questions?
I think it'd be interesting to talk to our sister region in the Chicago area, find out what issues we might have with the Borman extended and what kind of congestion issues they had at that point. Because my whole life it seems like we've always had issues in both Indiana and Illinois. That particular stretch of road.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. We talked to CMAP, our sister agency, the Chicago area does also keep track of the congestion along these same metrics as we do, but for their area. So it would be nice to coordinate with them to see how we line up in terms of what they're seeing.
And I think it's necessary because our traffic going out, their traffic coming in, it just seems that we have a couple of bottlenecks that slow down the traffic, not just for trucks, but for the passenger traffic as well.
Good question. And I should also mention that when it comes to congestion performance measure targets, we are actually required to coordinate with CMAP. So these are the reliability ones, which we don't always coordinate with, but it's like you said, it would be useful too. So then, all I have related to this presentation. Oh, this turned up. Oh, because I already did that. Anyway, I'll see this. So the next item on this staff updates.
Travel demand model improvement update.
So NERC, we're still under contract with Cambridge Systematics, updated travel demand model, and they have pretty much completed the 2019 base year model for our planning efforts. The only thing that we did notice that was a problem with the 2019 base year model when we started evaluating it was that it underestimated truck travel, especially the external pass-through truck movements. We noticed were very low, so we're trying to get them to come up with a revision for that, and they've been working on that. And they seem to have a solution by, they can always revert back to the kind of how the old model handled the pass-through truck traffic. But right now, it was very concerningly low, so we're waiting for an answer there. But other than that, they've already made progress. In addition to the base year model, they've been working on the future year models all the way to 2050. So we've seen their projections, and they do look like they're in line with what we'd expect to see there. And then we'll just have to extrapolate or interpolate every intermediate year between 2019 and 2050. That's pretty much just an exercise in fractions. So I think it's coming along well. We do expect to have the full suite of the travel demand model delivered to us by the consultant by when we're evaluating NOPA projects by January for sure, because then we'll have to evaluate our air quality performance based on the new model. Yeah. So that's all I have there. If anyone has any questions about that.
I commend staff for bringing it up with the consultant because their citizens constantly are concerned with the number of pass-through vehicles and their impact on the roads, particularly the truck traffic.
Yeah. Yeah, we weren't satisfied with the first cut of their delivery for the base year because we saw that the truck traffic, I think on 894 between Klein Avenue and Burke Street, for example, was only about 10 or 11% trucks. That's a little bit lower than what we actually see in that stretch. It's more like 35%, but they're working on that. So.
Okay. Any other business?
Just comment, each month the No Little Creek group is meeting, and they may like to attend some of our meetings here. I think I text me before I came in, with, one of the leaders of that organization. Basically, people seem to be centered around Wheeler and Northwest Union Township. And their biggest concern seems to me to be a lack of knowing what's going on. And, I told them I would report back to them, but we have scheduled a meeting November the 15th, 5 to 8 o'clock at the Expo Center to discuss the Willow Creek extension, and it should be rather extensive. So, just wanted to bring that up and let you know that there are a number of people concerned about what actually is the route, what actually is going to happen, what it's going to look like. Now, obviously, things that will affect their day-to-day lives. It's going to be transformative, and they feel as though they're in the dark.
Understood. And who's sponsoring that project?
Porter County government.
Porter County.
Commissioners, the highway department is involved in the application for the plan. So
Is the sponsor responding
Well,
adequately to the people?
the November 15th thing is for, Structure Point will be making a presentation with Bob Thompson, of Porter County, and it should be rather extensive, and hopefully it will, shed light for a lot of the people, maybe calm some of the people's concerns, because they feel basically that they don't have the information, and I explained to them that, they're free to come to the planning commission meetings to see if they can, at least express their concerns and come back. So I'm representing them from a very minor standpoint for my constituents in Union Township.
the goal is to have one point of contact, so the message is consistent. There are people, a lot of other concerns, but that's the meeting to really address them. Because the consultant will unveil the project, they'll discuss the concerns, see what kind of resolutions we can meet.
It's been about 2 years since we had the last, group meeting with about 24, people on the steering committee or whatever it was called.
And originally it was, as you know, with any road project, there were multiple possible routes. And this was to pare down what was most at least acceptable, in addition to getting some of the environmental information, as well as the civil information, that we've come to the best consensus they could.
Understood. Having gone through this process with Kennedy Avenue recently, I can just emphasize the value of keeping your general public informed. Misinformation was one of our concerns, and we tried to head that off going in.
And that seems to be similar in our situation as well.
And you have one consistent source, different parties say, trying to
Sure.
answer questions that we might not know the answers to, but might be taken out of context or might not even be valid from the standpoint of the answer. That's where the questions will be addressed.
I have one more announcement. So NERC is also conducting an Indiana Coastal Watershed Hazard Resiliency Needs Assessment. That's a mouthful, but basically, we've had a couple meetings, I think one virtual and one in person here in this room, just kind of orient people about how this program works. I'm not the expert on this program, so I can only say so much, but we are doing follow-up stakeholder interviews with your communities. If you know if your community hasn't yet participated in this needs assessment related to watershed resiliency hazards, then
When and how do we go about doing it?
so my colleague Jen Birchfield is heading this up, and as well as Ina Ibrahim. So they will be contacting individual stakeholders to arrange interviews. The idea is to get perspectives from a variety of different people across our community, not just.
Make sure I'm on the list.
No, the idea is that we need perspectives from not only public works types of officials, but also streets departments.
Oh, well, since the township has no city or town, we don't really have that other than through the town.
emergency responders, hospital medical groups, people that we need to have involved, active, things as simple as routing. That's why, highways and highway departments would be involved with emergency management. Does a lot of the direction on this, and they're all part of the Homeland Security Force that will ultimately address the disaster when we keep dealing with resilience.
I think the funding covers all the communities that are in the Lake Michigan watershed, but we're extending that to, at least we're gonna start with those communities and we'll see if there's extra funding.
We are.
Okay. Any other business, any other announcements? Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Well,
Any opposed? Or like I like said, all in favor, get up and let's hit the door.
Gotta go the way we